Yeah, so you were saying about
Yeah.
publishing and writing, which you
Yeah.
like best.
I love them both, and the idea originally was, if I start publishing other people, I'll have haven't turned mine around. I'll have people to talk to, because I sort of looked at self-publishing and thought, I don't want to do anything on my own. And I thought, I will be thinking about writing all the time, and therefore this will feed into my writing. Does it help? I just spend all my time doing admin, and accounts, and applications for funding, and sorting out readings, and running about London boxes of books and things. But I do think about writing all the time, and I'm still doing a little bit of writing, but it's sort of nano stuff. It's tiny amount of time I actually spend writing. It's usually when something comes up I can't ignore. And it's got to write this, I've got to write it now, never mind that this is a...
What do you do if you're, for instance, travelling and something just comes into your head?
Oh, I just get on with it. I'm a very productive train writer.
Okay.
I've written part of a novel on the way to Bath and back.
Yeah.
So, okay, I know what's happening. On crappy bits of paper, whatever I could find, because I ran out, my notebook ran out.
Yeah. And do you get woken in the night by characters?
Yeah. And generally what happens then is I write down a few words that I think are going to make sense, and in the morning I can think, what was that?
Yeah.
Not always. Some of my really the stories that I love best of what I've written have come from things that have come out of dreams. So wake up with an image of something and I think, okay, I don't know what the dream is about, but this bit is really strong and it's got something going for it, and I'm working with this, and I'm going to turn it into something.
I definitely think there's something about the night time when you've allowed everything else to fall out of your head.
Or not, as the case
or not, and that's when inspiration usually comes, and I have the same thing. I'm usually woken with scenes and stuff.
There's definitely an element of there has to be not a lot else going on. To distract. For many years I had a very, very stressful IT job, and I just never let go of it. My brain would be working on it overnight, and I'd be in the shower in the morning thinking, I know what the answer to this problem is that we've been fighting with. And for about 11 years, the only writing I did was between Christmas and New Year.
Wow.
Because that was the point at which I wasn't away and enjoying myself, and I wasn't at work, and I wasn't thinking about work. So this is a 3-day bit where I could, and I hadn't actually realised that's what I was doing until I was editing something, and I looked at it, the previous version of this was the same day last year. That is actually how long it's been. So technically I'm doing more writing than I used on that front, but it doesn't feel like it.
Do you think your methods have changed, or do you write the same way as you always did?
Well, we're talking a long period of time here. And, they hadn't quite invented computers when I started. So, certainly in terms of the physical methods, absolutely they've changed. But I still do a lot of writing longhand first, because I find the first edit of putting it onto the computer is often the most productive. That's when I'm looking at it and thinking, okay, what's the structure of this? Which bit comes first? Because it usually isn't where I started. Which bits are superfluous? Which bits are overwritten? Where am I overusing words? So the second draft, or the one that ends up on the computer, is usually pretty good. Whereas what's in the book is usually... that was just, form thinking.
You sound as if you had the time to write all day, you'd do it.
If somebody would give me enough money for someone else to run Arachne Press, because I don't want to give it up. But if I could have an Arachne manager and I just make it so. And all I had to do was read the stuff that had been pre-sifted for me so that it was good already, and say, yes, we'll have that one and that one and that one, and we'll pay them so much. That would be brilliant, and then I would write all the time. Absolutely. Because there's plenty of ideas. I've got a couple of files on my computer which is just say ideas or starts. And sometimes it's just a sentence. Sometimes I look at it and think, I really want to write that.
That was kind of my next question, whether you have lots of books kind of backed up in your head that you're waiting to get out.
Yeah.
They're just in a queue behind you.
There are, and sometimes I'm going through a notebook and there'll be something I've written down. That's a good idea. I really must do that sometime. Yeah. The most recent one that came to me is I'm going to write something about a charlatan who attaches himself to the Three Kings.
Wow.
And goes on that journey and causes an awful lot of trouble. And it's all going to be about auguries and horoscopes and all that stuff. And why would you follow a star across a desert? Why would you do that? Yeah, so I've got various things that are just a line, and then I've got stuff that's much more developed than that. I've got a historical novel I started a long time ago, and I got bogged down. And I do intend to finish that eventually. I mean, I know exactly what's going to happen. I know exactly what everything about it. It's just, I keep getting stuck on things like, okay, so if you leave a rebec hanging on a wall in Carcassonne in 1215 for 20 years, will the strings have rotted? And I just find myself, because this is really important to the plot. It's really important to the plot. Can this be played or not? And I don't know. I don't know where to find out. And what do they have for breakfast? I've given over on that one. Breakfast is breakfast. Don't describe it. Move on.
And how do you choose which of the backlog is going to come to the front?
Sometimes it's a case of I just sit down when a rare day I've got that's, okay, I can just do something now. I will just go through and I think, which one of these is yelling at me? Me now. Sometimes it's, I will make a connection somewhere and I suddenly think, right, okay, let's start. And I've got things that are almost finished and I look at them, it needs editing. And I like editing. In fact, I love editing. It's part of the fun. But I do find myself thinking, not in the mood for going over something. I want something new. So it's pretty random, really. I'm not a great believer in having a muse or any of that stuff. But I did actually once write a thing about the fact that my muse only calls on Monday mornings when it's really unconvenient.
And finally, why lesbian fiction?
Well, back in the mist of time when I first started writing, I actually started writing because Alex, my partner, said to me, do you think you could find me a cheerful lesbian novel for my birthday present? And I couldn't. And not to say that what I write is necessarily cheerful, quite a lot of it isn't. But
it was the doom and gloom section.
If they didn't end up dead, they ended up converted or they ended up in a mental health. And
pretty much.
That was really most of the options. Or it was madly ridiculous. And you just think, oh, God, and badly written. And I did actually manage to find one funny lesbian novel. It was by a woman called Sheila Ortiz Taylor. And it was called Fault Line. I felt such an achievement, and I thought, again, I can do this better at home with a small aubergine. So I started, and I don't think I could do it better to start off with, but got there in the end.
How long have you been writing?
30 odd years. Well, I've been writing longer than that. I was writing stories as soon as I could pick a pen up. In fact, I was doing them in pictures before I learned words. And when I had my first book published, my mum sent me as a congratulations card the very first story that she had found that I had written down, and she typed it out. But she ended up saying, "Don't know what the last line is. Your handwriting is so bad."
What age was that?
I reckon I was about 8, maybe 7. And I remember writing it, which was really scary.
So you've definitely got a lot to say about the world.
Oh yeah. Even then, it was quite quirky. It was called The Prince, the Princess and the Goat Herd. And there were these magic goats in it, which I can't remember what was magic about them, but they were magic, and it was very important. And it had this, I really hook, line and sinkered on the fairy tale thing, which is something I do a lot of. I love fairy tales, I love retelling them, and I love telling stories as though they're fairy tales. And it had all the riffs in it of repetition and things happening in threes and rivers that you can't get across unless you've got all these things. And my favourite line from it is every point that the prince and princess is definitely in charge. Every time they bump into someone, because they're busy running away, and they look at them and say, "And where are you two running off to?" To which they have no answer because they don't know where they're going. So it's like, yeah. Sort of, if it's a cartoon, they're going to be doing this. So yeah, I love fairy tales.
Great.
Am I right in thinking that you said there were going to be 5 books featuring Danny?
There are 5 books, yes.
And they're already written?
They're all written, yes.
How long did that take you?
4.5 years.
Yeah. And has it got quicker or slower?
I think it got quicker. Well, actually, the first book was written, the first draft of the first one that's out now, Girl with the Treasure Chest. That first draft was written in a month. But of course it was redrafted maybe 50 times after that, by myself, let alone any editors. Yes. But that one just came out very, very quickly. And the second one and the third one took a bit longer. But by the time I got to the fourth one, I'd left my job and decided that I needed to just write all day, because it got to the point where I resented doing anything else apart from writing. I resented having to stop to eat, having to go and get fresh air, anything else. So for the last 2, maybe 1.5 years, I wrote every day, every single day, until I was forced by my partner to take Sundays off. And Sundays were excruciating. It was absolutely excruciating.
Withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah, it was horrible. I'd have to go out for walks and get fresh air and things like that, and see people, and join the world. And I didn't want anything to do with that. I just had all this stuff just coming out of my head.
There's probably a study to be done on the impact of writing a novel on your health, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure I got pale and a bit withered and stuff.
RSI. Yeah. So, at what point in the writing did you realise that it was going to be that big? And did you know before you started the first one?
I didn't. Books? No, I had no. I did the first. The first book was very strange. I played football on Monday nights, and I was driving home from football, and I started having an argument between 2 characters out loud as I was driving along. I remember people looking across at me at the traffic lights, thinking, this poor lady's lost her mind, probably because she's lost or something like that. And I got home that night, and when I went to bed, I just brought the laptop with me, and I just started typing. It was just flying out. I couldn't type. I'm not a very fast typist, I'm not a typist. And I was hammering away with my index fingers, and I couldn't get it out quick enough. I was spelling things incorrectly, and I just wasn't correcting anything. It was just like so frustrating if I would forget something that I wanted to write, and then trying to capture it again would be impossible. It was just the worst thing. And as I asked you before, like if you get woken by characters, I was often, particularly with the first book, woken up in the middle of the night. And if I tried to just write a word or a note, and then it doesn't work, and I'd have to get up, put the kettle on, get the laptop out, and just keep writing for a couple of hours.
Good time.
Absolutely, yeah. And so after the first one, the day I finished it, a friend of mine was round my house, and I hadn't told anyone that I'm doing it apart from my partner. And then I said, I've written a book, do you want to read it? And she read it in 2 days. And she loved it. And then I thought, And so I let my sister read it. And then my partner, my sister, and our friend became kind of my barometers kind of thing. After I finished it, I just thought, yeah, there's more that could come on there. And so I wrote the second one. And then when I wrote the third one, I said, yeah, that's the end of it. But then it wouldn't leave me alone. Like, it was still waking me up. And by the time I got to the 4th and 5th, the 5th one was in 2 parts, because I was desperately trying to kill it off and it wouldn't die, sort of thing. And then finally I got to the end, and when I got to the end, I knew it was the end. And so, yeah, that's...
So you don't think there's any more to come?
Not in this series, no, definitely not. Yeah.
So what are your plans for publishing them?
Well, as you know, the first one was self-published. The second one has just gone into editing. It should be out any day now. Editing for me is very excruciating as well. It's a very painful process when you give someone else your work and they send it back and say, you can't do that, you can't write that, and that doesn't make sense. And I spent, with the first book, I spent about a month saying, oh, she doesn't understand me, she doesn't get it, she doesn't understand me. And the second month saying, she's quite right, of course she's right, it makes no sense. And in fact, I think I took on 90% of what was recommended to me, because I've never been to writing classes or anything like that. I never ever thought of writing a book until it came to me. At the time it came to me, so I never had any previous experience with that. I mean, I always loved to read, but I never ever considered writing, so I have to take what she tells me. It's painful, but yeah, so the second one will be self-published as well. I probably will self-publish all of them, because I use a company that takes care of all of that for me. They collaborate with me on designing the cover, and they do all the typesetting and put it up on the internet, and they do all of that for me, and I just give them their money. But I quite like that, because I did approach publishers and got quite close to the process of being taken on a few times, but there were rumblings and murmurings about things that they weren't happy with me writing and things that they wanted me to change. And they were the very things that I wanted to say. It happened to be the exact things that I wanted to portray. So what did they want to change? This is a story I don't often tell. I don't like telling it, but because I think it's a negative way, and it's not the only thing that was said to me, but the extreme was somebody said to me, we like it, but we want the protagonist to be a man. No, but that's not the worst of it. They also want the writer to be a man. And I'm not sure what they thought I could do about it. I don't know if they were giving me a timescale with which to take care of that. You know, like, I know.
2 years.
I don't know. Maybe they were going to give me money to take care. I don't know. Maybe the package would have been quite attractive. Who knows? But I thought, I can't believe that that's been said to me.
That is outrageous.
And the thing is,
off camera, you must tell me who that was.
I never will, because it's just that bad that I think that person must have had some sort of embolism or something.
Yeah.
And it was said in writing, it wasn't said verbally. It's in writing, so every time when I say, did I make that up, I go back and no, that is so and I think that sometimes things happen for a reason. I do believe in that, and I think that maybe that was a sign to tell me, go away from these people that are trying to change, and that was an extreme. But there were things that people saying, you can't put that, and that's uncomfortable, and that would make people uncomfortable, and I was thinking, that's exactly why it's written. I
mean, I've been told, you can't write about that, never mind you can't write that.
Exactly.
I'm like, excuse me?
A lot of people were concerned because the character in my book, Danny, is violent on occasion, and very violent on occasion, and they weren't happy. I think it's because it's a woman that's being violent. I do, and the way she's being violent is a very, perhaps traditionally seen as a male way that she's behaving, but her emotions and the way that she's displaying that is very female. And it's just one of those things. I know people like that. I know they exist. So why can't we write about them? And if people are uncomfortable, there must be a reason for that, you know? And I just wasn't willing to tone down any of that, because the book's not about violence. The book's not necessarily about the fact that she's gay. It's about emotions. It's about the whole emotionality, and there's things that I could do with her character because she's a woman that I probably wouldn't get away with the male character. If that was a male character, he would probably just be a violent stalker who nobody would want to read about. But being female, there's a lot more depth to her. We can show her weakness. You know, when male heroes and anti-heroes are written about, they always are very glib, in danger, and they never feel anything emotionally, and they're always so strong. You know, I've got this character who's female. She can be really strong, she can be really clever, charismatic, but her weaknesses are clearly on display. We can see all of them. she's no hero. She's someone who at points you'll think, wow, she's very cool, and other points you'll think, Jesus Christ, she's awful. And that's what it's about.
Sometimes you want to shake her.
Exactly, exactly.
Why are you doing this? It's
exactly.
Really
so if you were to take out the parts that make people uncomfortable, the whole balance is lost.
Yeah.
I don't want to write about someone who's so cool and everything goes right and she can just, click her fingers. Who wants to read that? It's boring.
It's throwaway stuff.
Yeah, it's boring. It's boring. This is a real character. This is someone who is showing that behind anger, behind violence, there's always fear and weakness. That's the point of it. The point is that you can't judge people, you can't throw people away. There's something going on behind, and I'm showing you, in this instance, hopefully, that there's stuff going on.
Right, well.
You're a rant.
So when's the next one due out?
It's, as I say, it's coming out of editing, so it'll be me holding it up.
Depends how long you've
It'll be me holding it up saying, I can't cope with whatever they've said.
How long you've been about changes.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then it takes about 2 months to go through the production stage, so around summer the second one should be out,
So, given that The Girl with the Treasure Chest is this gritty thriller, but with this solid core of real people, how much do you draw on your professional experience for material and atmosphere?
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, I was born and I grew up in Hackney for most of my childhood, so I know a little of life around there, and obviously I was a criminal lawyer for 18 years, so again I draw on a lot of experiences from that. And so I think combine the two, and also I've always had an interest in psychology and why people do the things they do. And I think those three things combined, and the fact that I'm always interested in emotions and relationships and how people relate to each other, I think put all that together, and that's what I came up with.
So do you think you'll, when you move away from this particular series, do you think you'll write in other genres, or is this your thing now?
It's a difficult question, to be honest. I've started two other things that are completely different. I don't even know how to describe. One's a short story. Again, it's about relationships. And the other, I can't remember what it is now. It can't be that interesting. I can't remember. But my head is so wrapped up in these characters, I still at times, very rarely now, but I still at times think, oh, I know, I should change that, and go back to book 3 or book 4, and just go back to pieces and change it. So I'm very much consumed by it at the moment. I don't know, to be honest, if there's any more books in me. It's a really strange thing to say, maybe, especially to someone who's written almost all your life, as long as you've known yourself, you've been writing. But for me, it didn't come to me like that. It's come quite suddenly, and it might be the only thing I ever do in writing. I have no idea. I really don't.
So do you think of yourself as a writer?
I have a hard time describing myself that way. Yeah.
So you write, but you're not a writer?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I can't be sure, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So asking you why lesbian fiction is almost redundant.
It
chose you.
It's just what came to me. It literally did come to me and was bursting out of my head, and I had to catch it and write it and catch it and write it. And when it ran out, I stopped. And so I don't know what happened next. But definitely there is this idea about that character, and also some of the other characters in the same book, is that there are a lot of characters that aren't being portrayed.
Yeah.
And some of them, I hope, are portrayed in my book, but there are lots of people that don't have a voice, and they should have one, and they ought to have one, because we're all here for a reason. Like, we wouldn't be here if we weren't supposed to be here. And so for people to not have a voice, I find that a little bit jarring. So maybe I will still write other things.
We're really coming at it from very different places, aren't we?
Yeah. You're a writer. If I am, I'm not sure. I think I might be just someone that had some things I wanted to say about the world, about what I thought about it. I suppose everyone's got things they want to say about the world. And that's just the way I've said my piece.
Yeah, because I really feel like what I have to say about the world has changed quite a bit.
Right.
You know? I'm reluctant to say mellowed. The world has improved, is part of it.
Yeah.
Because when I republished Mosaic, I did actually think, how's this going to stand up now? It's 20 odd years old, life has moved on. One of the characters at one point shrieks at someone, but he couldn't marry Philip, could he? Well, of course he could now, but not everywhere. There are plenty of places where it's worse now than it was for us in the 70s and 80s. And
much worse.
Much worse, you know. And so because I did think about it, and I thought, do I rewrite them? Do I just treat them as period pieces? And I thought, actually, if this was Russia, every single word of these would be identical.
Absolutely,
So let's go with it. But what I'm writing now, the concerns are much more sort of ethereal almost. It's almost I need to write about something weird that will catch my attention, and I make it mine. And it's not, I'm not out there raising my fist at the world anymore. Sometimes that's what I want to do, and that's what I do. But I'm much more subtle about how I go about it. My most recently about to be published thing is in an anthology from Old Fast magazine. So they're collecting everything that they've published in the last 2 years. To such an extent they didn't actually tell me that they were doing so. And they sent me a thing inviting me to the launch of the book that my story's in. I think, contract? Never mind. And that is a retelling of the Minotaur myth, but from way before up to the point that he's born, and it's all about how that happened, because the story about how that happened is completely bonkers. You know, this queen has an affair with a bull. I'll give over. You know, and it's not even a god pretending to be a bull; it's an actual bull. So I worked out how this could be, and it isn't actually a bull. And then I thought, okay, and I'm not going to do this from the Queen's Book. So I had this tiny minor character who was a bull dancer, and she's 14, and everything is from her point of view, and it somehow it absolutely worked. I was so pleased with this because the tension and the fear and the blood and the politics and all from this quite simple 14-year-old as well. She's not all that bright. But she's bright in a particular way, so she's sort of going around saying, well, so if Day Daedalus is that clever, why is he a slave? And why is his son a bull dancer? This doesn't happen to clever people. I don't think he's as clever as he thinks he is. And the whole thing is just all about the way the politics of this very claustrophobic place create an inevitable outcome. And it's all fundamentally because they believe that they can prevent earthquakes by sacrifice. And if you start from that point, you're not going to go anywhere good.
Absolutely.
So, you can read it as a metaphor for anything you like.
Absolutely.
It's a good story, basically.
Excellent.